You're mentioning about how India is reported in certain Western liberal left, center-left media. I think it's important for people to realize in the Western center-left media, when India is being talked about, it's only being talked about as a proxy for domestic political commentary. The attacks on India, which you do see, and you see it in similar Canadian media, British media, these are just attacks on conservatives. They are not really about India.
Is mainstream media dead?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. But this does not mean that quality journalism is dead. This does not mean that newspapers do not have a future. This does not mean that everything will be on demand. It means that there will be just a few people reading newspapers the way they were. But then if there is an evolution of platforms of services and journalists and media follow it, then this could be great news also for them.
I do feel that mainstream media is not what it once was, undoubtedly, but I do believe that it still has its own purpose. A lot of people, I think, in the world are informed mostly through mainstream media. Now that we, of course, don't fall into that category, I think it's a very elitist way of looking at things. I do believe that the vast majority of the population is still mostly informed through mainstream media, and that we still do have to put a lot of work into keeping mainstream media as objective as possible, and using maybe the alternative media that exists now to hold it accountable.
I think it's being profoundly disrupted. So I think it's being replaced. What you would traditionally identify as mainstream media are now resulting in independent journalists who create subscription pads for people to follow them and fund their work. And that I think is empowering journalists themselves to find platforms that allow them to do their craft in more thoughtful ways. And I think the craft of an opinion piece is something that is now being confused between think tanks and opinion pages and newspapers. And that's not entirely unhealthy. What I think is that news is something that transmits, we all know the event when it happens. What we struggle with is to identify how that event is located in the context of history. And that debate is becoming much more enriched.
The media space has been democratized. I think the elite in many countries still pay attention to some of the traditional media. Certainly in the US, that's the case. But the space has been democratized by any metric, that is true. And their monopoly on information and their monopoly on the public discussion has been significantly eroded. Not entirely diminished, but more people now have voices and entry points into the public discussion than they ever did before. Non-traditional media now has much greater influence on the global narrative, and I think that's largely a positive thing.
It depends what channel you're watching.
No, I don't think so. I mean, in a lot of countries, Australia is one of them, there are authoritative and responsible media outlets, and they do have the ability to kind of set the agenda, if you like, for others to follow. And I think that's a very important facet of our democracy, and it would be a shame if we lost it. There are, of course, irresponsible elements as well, but there's not much we can do about them. But we do need to have authoritative voices that are the organ of record, if you like.
No, I don't think one can say that mainstream media is dead. Look, what's happened is a new technology has emerged. It has tremendous influence. Mainstream media's absolute control over the narrative has come down. That is true. But they continue to be a very powerful force in the conversation. And the way I see it, conversation has been democratized a great deal. Technology has made practically everyone a journalist, right? What that means is there's also loads of noise, right? But that's a part of the democratic process. I think music will emerge from the noise, just give it time.